What's happening, everyone? My name is Pardon My Presence, and you are listening to the Pardon My Presence YouTube channel, a channel where I address common issues from a unique point of view. It's also a place where I pardon a space for critical thought and analysis in today's society, where well-informed, logical assessments are slowly becoming taboo. Alright, so this week in politics, we're looking at the 25th to the 31st. How's everyone doing? I hope everyone's doing well. I hope everyone had a great week. And I hope everyone's been paying attention to what's been happening in the news. Not too much in regards to any political events, but there's a lot of things that happened around it, which is pretty interesting. I want to talk about three things. Lil Wayne's endorsement of Donald Trump. I want to talk about the Biden-Harris tour bus that was, ran out of Austin, Texas. And I also want to talk about how people shame black people for not voting. And I think that's very incorrect because when you look at the statistics, that's actually not true. And I'll get into that. So those are the three things I want to discuss in this week of politics, American politics, from the 25th to the 31st of October. Let's get going. Okay, let's get right into it with the first topic, which is Lil Wayne's endorsement of Donald Trump. Now, I don't really care. You are an individual. You could, endorse whoever you want to endorse. That's your prerogative. But the interesting thing about this is that Lil Wayne has a long history of him being anti-activist, being anti-pro-black movement. He's been all for self, and he's been more of an individualist than anything in regards to standing up for or with black people as a race. Now, he has made the accusation that the reason why he's like this is because of his childhood experience where he shot himself in the head, and when cops came over, the black cops didn't assist him. It was only a white cop that saved his life, and as a result of that childhood trauma, he's had a fondness for white people, I guess. And to him, because a white person saved him, that means there's no such thing as racism. And he doesn't take into consideration that that particular white cop was a great person, a great individual, someone who had morals, but it doesn't mean that everyone is that way. Just like those two black cops that walked past him, it doesn't mean that every black person is that way as well too. But again, based on Lil Wayne's history and the things that he said about Emmett Till and the lyrics that he uses to disparage black women and his colorism, all of those things that he said in the past, it's pretty evident that he's an individualist. But here's the interesting thing about what he said in the past about Black Lives Matter. In regards to Black Lives Matter, he's on record saying that he doesn't know what that means, he doesn't know what that's about, he feels it's the wrong name, which, it might be, that's great. But the interesting thing about what he said is that he said, his life matters, my life matters. I'm a rich person. Again, I'm paraphrasing, I'm giving you the PG version. He says, I'm rich, my life matters, I'm important, I have money. So what's this movement about Black Lives Matter? I don't understand that, right? He also says that his life matters to his bitches. He's also made comments about the fact that he's never experienced racism in the past, and so on and so forth. And apparently, I guess he doesn't attribute to the fact that he's famous, he's a rapper, which nowadays hip-hop is considered pop music, and that he is someone who has money. So with all those accounts in play, of course it's obvious people are going to treat you a little bit differently because they know who you are. On top of that, you have a very distinct look, so people know who you are, right? But interesting thing about this is that he's been relatively famous since he was a child. So maybe he hasn't experienced racism in that sense, but I don't think he understands the definition of racism, because it could also be the fact that you have people who are not black who look at you as just an entertainer, just a celebrity, just a famous person, and not someone who has real feelings, not someone who has dealt with adversity, so on and so forth. They look at you as someone that has to perform, and the day will come when you no longer can perform, and when that day comes when you can't perform, you will start to see how people really treat you. But again, that's aside from the fact. Let's get right into what he's talking about here, because what he says is that he endorses Donald Trump and that he's met with Donald Trump. Okay, so again, with all the individualist comments that he's made in the past, this is what he said in the form of a Twitter post. Okay, a Twitter post. Let me read it for you. Okay, just had a great meeting with Donald Trump. Besides what he's done so far for criminal reform, the Platinum Plan is going to give the community real ownership. He listened to what we had to say today and assured he will get the job done. Now notice the words that he's used in this particular tweet. He used the word we. He used the word community. He used the word and assured he will get the job done. Now, it's pretty evident that there's a campaign going on. The election is today. Votes are at stake. This is an endorsement. We all know that. But the interesting thing about this is that Lil Wayne is now using words like we, community. When has he ever done anything for the community? When has he ever acknowledged the struggles and the strife that his community faced or faces or will face? He's done nothing of the sort. He's never been seen protesting. He's never been seen with people of his color or people of his struggle. He's never been a voice for the voiceless, even though he has a large platform. On top of that, he really uses social media. So for him to post this and use words like we and community, those are clear buzzwords for trying to encompass voters to call to action the people that he's supposed to represent, right? His followers, his quote unquote constituents, if you want to call it that. But it's clear that this is written in a way for people to say, oh, well, Lil Wayne endorses Trump, so now I'm a Lil Wayne follower, so I have to vote for Trump as well too. Meanwhile, he doesn't give a fuck about what anyone else says other than what he's doing for his own life and for his own bitches. So it's just interesting to see how certain celebrities are endorsing people and using these words, we, community, let's. Who are you speaking for? Who are you speaking on behalf for? Who told you to go to speak to Donald Trump on my behalf? Or on Black Americans' behalf? Anyone's behalf? So this is the interesting thing about this particular post. And it's kind of sad that celebrities and rappers are being used in this form, whether it's for Republicans or whether it's for Democrats. I wonder if people realize that, hey, you are technically being used as a pawn. But I guess that wouldn't matter if people are being paid to do this, because I don't think people realize these endorsements are not free. Lil Wayne got paid for this. And on a side note, let's talk about Lil Wayne's attire here. He has a turtleneck and some type of V-neck sweater. It really looks like he, you know when you're a hood and you have to go somewhere where it's formal, but you have no formal clothing, you don't have any suit or tie, so you try to pick out the best outfit out of your closet that you have, and you just put some shit together, and this is what it came up with: a tight turtleneck with a V-neck sweater that looks like it's from his high school days. It's weird. Why can't Lil Wayne just get a tie or a suit or something, or dress in all black or something, right? Anyways, that's my comment on the whole Lil Wayne situation. Let's move on to something that's more important. In America, they say that whites traditionally have the highest voter turnout out of all races and groups, but the second highest is Black Americans. Now they say traditionally whites have the highest voter turnout amongst all racial groups. However, the second are Black Americans, or should I say Black people in general. They have a higher voter turnout than Hispanics and Asians. And based on what I'm reading here and the stats that I found, and this should be something that if you're well versed in politics, you should probably already know this, but a lot of people don't because of the marketing and the messaging that politicians use and rappers and entertainers use to get Black people to vote. In 2008, the voter turnout for whites was 66.1%. The voter turnout for Black people in that same year, the same election, was 65.2%. So just 1% off as far as participation. And in 2012, Black people voted higher. Their voter turnout was higher in 2012. So in other words, for Obama's second term, Black people came out to the amount of 66.6% compared to white people, who was only 64.1%. Now let's look at Hispanics and Asians, because Asians voted 49.3% and Hispanics 47.6%. Now I don't know about you, but I haven't seen a ad in regards to Hispanics not voting or not participating in the system and being shamed and told to vote or die. I don't remember anyone marketing to Asians that they need to vote or die, or that a vote is a terrible thing to waste, or that if they're not voting, that means they're on the basketball court trying to shoot their jumpers, like Charlie Clips. You don't get that type of advertising or marketing to those groups. But to black people, it's shame on you if you don't vote. Shame on you if you're not at the polls. Meanwhile, the amount of obstacles that black Americans face, as far as gerrymandering, as far as voter ID or voter suppression, issues with voter ID, incarceration, polling stations closing without any notice. And these things happen within black communities, black write-ins. With all of those obstacles in place that are put in place intentionally, they still come out to vote. So what is the excuse for the Asians? What is the excuse for the Hispanics? Why don't they ever ask them, why don't they vote? I don't ever recall seeing anything on the news where they don't really discuss those things with those groups. Why is that? I'd like to know, because we always hear about what black people are doing and what black people are thinking and what today's stats on black people are, right? There's always some scrutiny that happens when it comes to black Americans, even black Canadians. There's always some type of scrutiny. So I'll be interested to know why they aren't voting and why only we, as far as black people, are shamed to vote. Me, I'm on the sidelines because I'm Canadian. I'm a black Canadian. I don't vote in the US election. I vote in the Canadian election. But I love American politics. I'll be honest with you. It's more entertaining. It's more interesting. More eventful. The debates are a lot better. So on and so forth. So let's get into what we saw as far as display of aggression in Austin, Texas, where Trump supporters, I guess, surrounded a Biden-Harris tour bus. And pretty much they didn't run him off the road, but they pretty much made sure to run him out of the town, right? Where they had to cancel certain speaking events or campaign engagements within that city. And they left. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. You would think that because this is a potential next president of the United States, that they would have security, right? Like the Secret Service, and that they would discourage the type of behavior from people in Texas or Trump supporters. But apparently that's not the case here. And the interesting thing about this, and this is what I said in my last discussions in regards to, these weeks in politics, is the fact that Trump supporters are diehard cult fans of Donald Trump. They vote for him as opposed to people in the Democratic Party, which are voting against Trump. And you can never underestimate people who are willing to do foolishness like this, because these are the people that will wait in long lines to vote if they have to. These are people that will risk their freedom to make sure that Donald Trump wins if they have to. Meanwhile, the people who are supporting Biden and Harris, they might not have the same enthusiasm, right? So you can never underestimate someone's will, especially someone who is this flagrant, I guess is the word you could use, or this irresponsible. Okay, but this is interesting to see, because you'd think that the Secret Service would step in and get rid of these guys, even the local police, but apparently that did not happen. So it just goes to show you how motivated these guys are and how emboldened people have become since Trump has taken office in 2016. And I wonder what would happen if Trump wins and this continues for another 4 years. How emboldened will these people be? And whether or not, on the flip side, media, social media, news conglomerates, will they also be emboldened to try to deface Donald Trump every minute, every second, every hour? We'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, it's 2020, November 3rd. It's time to vote. Whatever you're going to do, I hope you do it for the right reasons. If you choose not to vote, that's your prerogative as well too. No one can ever shame you for that. That's still a vote. A non-vote is still a vote. So keep that in mind. But whatever you do, do it with a good conscience. Make sure you're voting for somebody as opposed to voting against someone. And never vote out of fear. Always vote out of support. And that's all I wanted to say from a Canadian on this side of the border. I wish everyone well, and we'll talk about the results and this week in review of American politics. Pardon my presence. Like, share, subscribe, leave comments. Peace.